just a little thought, really, coming out of what we had from our young people's thoughts. I'm very interested. They finished by saying, so how is Christmas impacting you? And statistics have shown that, on the whole, Christians are not particularly impacted by Christmas more than anybody else, except that they sing lots and lots and lots of carols and go lots and lots of carol services, and thus take up quite a bit of time in church. But actually, most economic decisions and moral decisions and social decisions within the Christian community are pretty identical to everybody else's. Because there are actually a lot of nice people out there inviting people along for Christmas, visiting the sick, and giving to Christian aid. That is challenging. How is it with us? How are we impacted by this? Now, because it's a long time ago, and my verse this morning is a text, is something that I never preach on at all. At the beginning of that Christmas bit, the Christmas story, it said, in those days. Remember that? In those days. Then. Now, that's a long time ago. And you all jollily sang, many years ago. I mean, that's an awful long time. So we've got here 20 chairs, all right? 20 chairs. And if you imagine that Christmas is over there by the band, if you could sort of, that's great. I can walk down. All right, so we're down here. So if Christmas was there and actually happening, shepherds, angels, wise men, all that stuff, you know, and why don't you come down here, folks? That's great. And up here is today, with your Christmas and your Christmas tree, there are essentially 20 centuries between the two, aren't there? That's an awful long time. If you think, to start off with, in broad terms, don't quibble about this, but in broad terms, everybody here was born and knows, everybody they know, on the first chair, all right, in the last century. All right, especially with 17 years on, you know, sort of thing, isn't it? And if you think what goes into this first chair, things that happened a long, long time ago, like England winning the World Cup, I mean, and the Second World War, and the First World War, and between these two chairs, Britain was great, you know. What's happened since? But anyway, you know, and so, but you go down a few chairs. You say that's the 18th century, all right, or the 19th century. 18th. We get down to we're only just down here. We get to Waterloo and Trafalgar and all that stuff. You know, we know. So, and we go all through English history. There's Henry VIII. You remember him and all those wives and all that stuff. You know, by the time we get to here, we're not very far down at all. We've got to the Battle of Hastings and the Norman invasions. I mean, that's about where most of us started school history, if you didn't do ancient history. So what happened up there then? It's half of it. There's nothing happening at all, as far as I can see. It might be the Dark Ages and could have been Arthur and all that stuff. But all the way back here, just as long as it was from Hastings to here, to get, that is a lot in those days. I think we just need to take it seriously. How much are we impacted by anything else that happened out there? Well, I've been to Hadrian's Wall, right? That happened about 350 AD, right? And you might have been to the Roman baths, but actually it's the Romans again, isn't it? All right? It was about 400 years. 400 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, when the Romans left. All right? And we've been in a mess ever since. But it's a very long time, isn't it? And I think we need to get our heads around it, because the question has to be, how is it that Jesus, being born in a stable there, in those days, impacts me there? We try and sort that normally in two ways. The first of all, we're up here, and we're pretending it's a rerun. We're pretending. I'm bad at this, because I go, you know, if you get a nice midnight thing with a star, a clear sky, and you sing Silent Night, and you think, we're doing a rerun. We are imagining that Jesus is being born. It's a bit like those of us who imagine that Jesus is being crucified on Good Friday. Right? But he's not. At Christmas, there are no wise men, there are no shepherds, there are no sheep, there is no stable. It happened in those days. Mind you, some of us we know that really, but we are the people who want to look at the Bible passage and we say, yeah, we need to study that, we need to think about it, we need to meditate on it. If you're like that, you're standing here on your century, all right, and you're looking down here with your binoculars, you see. And you think, you come into church, you think, perhaps there's something in Luke and Matthew and John that I hadn't noticed in a previous Christmas. That I could learn something new. Nothing wrong with that. but you'll know that you can learn new things for 50 Christmases, and it doesn't necessarily change your life. So for our young people and for us, how this works is a bit different to that. Now, who's been on an aircraft carrier? Who's been on I know somebody's been on there. Some people have been on aircraft carriers. All right. That's good. Well, yeah. We're soon going to have two almost as big as that one. But so, when you imagine an aircraft carrier sailing along, and then, especially, a picture of a that's right, that's great, an F-15 just landing on it. Now, that's a good picture, because I want you to imagine this in history. This is the last 2,000 years. All right, the aircraft carrier starts over here in the band. All right, the aircraft is going along like this, and at the first Christmas, the aircraft lands on the aircraft carrier. And it stays landed on the aircraft carrier, but the aircraft carrier keeps moving. So actually, the aircraft keeps moving as well. And what happens really at Christmas is that we are celebrating the landing of Jesus. To be at ground level with us. If you don't have the landing, he's not on the aircraft carrier. But it doesn't have to do a loop every year and land at Christmas every time, just to say, I'm landing. It just sticks there on the aircraft carrier. So this is the initiation of the era in which we live, that Jesus is with us because Jesus in history arrived. I mean, Jesus was in the universe from the beginning of the world, beginning of creation, but in terms of ground level, it was Bethlehem, it was there was a grid reference. You need to know. I remember landing on an aircraft carrier and thinking, oh, it's very small, isn't it? It is. I sometimes think that, looked at from God's point of view, looking at the world, and he said, look at that planet, it's very small, isn't it? But you land, and you've got to know where it is. You wouldn't want to be wandering around in the sky looking for it. And so, at the right time, in the right place, there is a landing, and it comes. That's fine for the defense review. Good. So, what we've got here is something up here for not just our younger people, but our older people, that has arrived because of something that happened up there. Jesus is here because he landed, and he's continued with us all the way through. And for instance, you remember that we had the wise men, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So he arrives and lands with under his wings, if you like, gold, because there's kingship. That means real power, real authority, real oomph, right? And it doesn't go away. We don't have God doing a great thing at Christmas and it sort of fades out. By the time we get to William the Conqueror, he's not king anymore. All these kings come and go, but not. Anybody been watching The Crown? I mean, we got a great queen, but she's not in the same league. Right? So this kingship and this power runs all the way through because the aircraft stays on the aircraft carrier. Again, we get frankincense, incense, they burn that as a sign of prayer. It's a sign of being able to access God. Well, they access God. I know the angels were singing there, but the angels don't have to sing all the time. After what Jesus did, we have access to God, and he goes on burning the incense all the way through. So when we get to Christmas this year, you've still got the chance to say your prayers and to sense the presence of Jesus with you. Up there on the end chair. It's extraordinary, because he's come all the way through. And myrrh, back to the cross and the star. Now, we're going to go about a third of the way down the first chair, aren't we, to about 30 years when Jesus died on the cross and rose to life. But by 35 years, we have resurrection, we have the possibility of salvation, and that possibility is retained all the way through. Past Arthur, Salvation is there. Past William the Conqueror, and they knew that. They built cathedrals. And so it was all the way through. And so when all of us get up this end, our Christmas, Jesus is here because he hasn't gone away. With authority, with love, and with the possibility of salvation. That's how it is. So really, it's a bit like, on the day of Pentecost, it doesn't say, that the prophet Joel doesn't say, in those days, he says, in these days. And what I want to challenge you with this morning is that we need to celebrate what happened in those days because of the potential it has for us in these days, in your day. Not just is Jesus in the world, is he just on the aircraft carrier, but is he in your world? To all those who received him, he gave the power to become the children of God. This year, don't think, oh, that's a nice aeroplane on the aircraft carrier, isn't it? It's been there some time. You know? Think, Jesus, I really need your power. Not mystically. I know you're not in Bethlehem at the moment. You're here. Not sort of intellectually, oh, I can understand the significance of Christmas. But through the power of Jesus' Spirit, today, here and now. 20 centuries on. Great stuff. Let's pray together, shall we? Father, we do thank you for all that you've done in Jesus. We thank you for the specifics for Mary and Joseph, who were there and are no longer there. For those shepherds who were there and are no longer there. For the sheep who were there and are gone, long gone, as are the wise men and their camels and all that. But you are not long gone. And we thank you that Jesus is at ground level, as a king with power and strength for us when we are weak, as a priest to bring us to Jesus to the Lord when we feel far away. We thank you that he died on the cross 30 years into all this, but since then the resurrection has applied. And so all these years on, help us to open our hearts to you in a dynamic way and say thank you that you are here in my world. I pray that you would be here in my heart this year. We ask this for Jesus' sake. Amen.